Welcome, welcome, welcome. Thank you for joining me. Um, I am actually reteaching a session that I did on Tuesday night concerning the characteristics of Boaz. And so this is actually part two, which did not pick up in our recording, our initial recording. So I'm actually redoing it. So those who are following along with the study will be able to have part two. So we pick up with Ruth chapter 3, and we were talking about spotting a Boaz, characteristics of a Boaz. So that's where we're going to begin. And we're starting at Ruth chapter 3, verse 7. And I was sharing that this is actually a segment out of an ebook that I'll be doing called Church Love Bliss. Believe Love is Sacred and Special. And this will be coming out of volume 2. We do have volume 1 is already out. So if you look for Church Love, BLISS, on either Amazon or Barnes and Nobles, we do have it available as an ebook. All right, so let's get back into the teaching here. Ruth chapter 3, verse 7. It says, "And when Boaz had eaten and drunk, and his heart was merry, he went to lie down at the end of the heap of corn. And she came softly and uncovered his feet and laid her down." One of the characteristics that I saw here in terms of Boaz is that Boaz was content. Boaz was content. And what do I mean by that? I mean that in terms of his lot in life, in terms of his career, in terms of just what he was doing as a man, he was content. And one of the characteristics that is really important in terms of spotting a godly man is the fact that he is content with his lot in life. I often tell young ladies, especially as I'm counseling, that if a man is not content in their life and you're trying to pursue a relationship with them, it's going to be a challenge, because you cannot please someone, or you cannot be that person's ultimate go-to for happiness if they're not content within themselves. And so Boaz was content in his life with where he was at that moment. Ruth chapter 3, verse 8. It says, "And it came to pass at midnight that the man was afraid and turned himself, and behold, a woman lay at his feet." Here we express and we see Boaz's character, that, Boaz is not looking at Ruth as if, she's some piece of meat and, he has an opportunity to take advantage of her, but he's actually showing a measure of fear and a measure of reverence, because, he spots a woman at his feet at midnight. And, in our culture teaches that this is a booty call. This is this is an opportunity for you to do something of an ungodly nature with a woman. But we see here in Boaz's response that his response is not one of seduction. His response is not one of, hey, I'm going to take advantage of this moment because I have this woman that's at my feet at midnight and we're alone. So that tells you a lot there about his character as a godly man. Verse 9, "And he said, Who art thou? And she answered, I am Ruth, thine handmaid. Spread therefore thy skirt over thine handmaid, for thou art a near kinsman." One of the things here to note is the thing that she's actually telling him to spread over her is actually a tallit. So that's another indication that that Boaz was a man who was a man of prayer. Okay, he was a man of devotion. He's not making any fast moves or any sudden moves. He's trying to find out and gather information about who is this laying at my feet. And one of the other things I pointed out in the teaching is that we have a culture now that discourages women from wanting this kind of submission. And what do I mean by that? Well, Ruth, in essence, is saying, I'm available to be covered. I'm available to come under your wing of protection. And so um, I don't know any man that would be like, no, I don't want a woman to, a wife to submit to me, right? So Ruth is actually presenting herself to Boaz, and she's saying, I am available to be protected. I am available to be covered. I desire to be covered. So when it talks about spread therefore thy skirt over thine handmaid, she's actually letting him know that she wants to be covered. She is willing to submit, and that's very important. So think about it in terms of that. We often have a culture that encourages women to say, I'm every woman, it's all in me. Submission is seen as a curse word sometimes. But the reality is there's a power that comes in proper submission. So that is what Ruth is saying here. And then she goes on to say, for thou art a near kinsman. In other words, you have the legal right to pursue me. And so what does Boaz do? Verse 10, he says, blessed be thou of the Lord, my daughter, for thou hast showed more kindness in the latter end than at the beginning, inasmuch as thou followest not young men, whether poor or rich. Again, we see Boaz's character just shining through here. He was discerning. He knew Ruth was not a loose woman. He knew Ruth was not a gold digger. And understand this, ladies, Boaz had been watching Ruth for an entire season. And so a lot of times we think that men are not paying attention to us, or they're not watching our actions or our behaviors. But clearly we could see in the scripture text that Boaz had his eyes on Ruth, and he was paying attention to her behavior. He notices that, she's not running after men. He notices that, she's not seeking after men for what they have or their wealth or their standing in society. So these things are very important. The other thing to note about Boaz here is throughout the scripture text in the book of Ruth, you will consistently hear him call Ruth his daughter. In other words, there's a proper context and a proper relationship that he has with Ruth. He's not calling her something different in this nighttime than he does in the daytime. He doesn't see her as his boo or his bae or his sideline or his side chick. He actually is referring to her as his daughter because she is much younger than him. So I do want you to pay attention to that in terms of godly characteristics, that Boaz's confession towards her is consistent. He does not address her differently than he would in the light of day. And that is very, very important, and the question would be to the young ladies who are watching, what are you allowing men to call you? How are you allowing men to address you? Are they in a Sunday morning setting, are they addressing you as sister? And then at night they're addressing you as boo, bae, tay, whatever. And they have no covenant with you. They have no commitment to you. You're not in a relationship with them. So even taking into context the conversation and how she's being addressed is very important. So what are you calling the women of God if you're a man of God? And how do you see them? Do you see them as your sister in the Lord, your daughter in the Lord, your mother in the Lord? How do you see the women of God? Verse 11, he says, and now, my daughter, fear not. I will do to thee all that thou requirest. For all the city of my people doth know that thou art a virtuous woman. So again, Boaz is pointing out the fact that I've taken notice of your reputation. And guess what? Everyone else in these seasons of life that you've been here, everyone else in the city knows that you are a virtuous woman. Your reputation precedes you. Okay? Understand this. Boaz didn't have to question her reputation, nor did he compromise it. I'll say that again. Boaz didn't have to question her reputation, nor did he compromise it. Verse 12, he says, and now it is true that I am a near kinsman, howbeit there is a kinsman nearer than I. Again, here's another characteristic of a godly man that is shining through. He is in essence saying, Ruth, I'm interested. I see that you're interested in me, so the feelings are mutual. But I need to ensure that I'm not usurping another man's gift. This is important. Boaz, in integrity, takes the time to say, I want to make sure that my pursuit of you is legal, that I have the legal right and the authority to pursue you as my wife. We live in a very interesting society, especially in terms of American culture and morals, where people don't really pay much more attention to things like adultery and divorce and what the scripture says concerning it, and how you could be, in fact, making a person an adulterer by involving themselves in a relationship that may not be legal according to God's scriptures and God's standards for divorce. So here, yes, Ruth is a widow, but there are some other kinsmen. There's a kinsman that's nearer than Boaz that has the ability, according to the Jewish law, to redeem her. So Boaz says, I want to clear the air. I want to make sure that everything is on the up and up, that I have the legal right to pursue you. How many men have relationships and friendships that have ended very badly because of this issue right here, because of lack of integrity, either with men themselves pursuing someone that they don't really have the authority to pursue, or the woman who may be dating 2 or 3 friends at the same time, and all of them are pursuing her and she's allowing it. And so those are some things that you would have to look at in terms of integrity. Verse 13, he says, tarry this night, and it shall be in the morning that if he will perform unto thee the part of a kinsman, well, let him do the kinsman part. But if he will not do the part of the kinsman to thee, then will I do the part of the kinsman to thee, as the Lord liveth, lie down until morning. So Boaz, again, he asked her to wait so that he could set the matter straight. And here's another principle about this godly character and godly man. He does not make her confront the other suitor. He takes the responsibility. He takes it upon himself to say, you don't have to go do this, Ruth. I'm the one who's going to set the matter straight. I'm going to man up. I'm going to address this suitor, and I want to make sure that everything is on the up and up. Verse 14, and she lay at his feet until the morning, and she rose up before one could know another. And he said, let it not be known that a woman came into the floor. Boaz was very discreet. He understood that according to Jewish culture, there was a reason why Ruth was approaching him in this way. We know that this is not common practice in Jewish culture, but if you understand the fact that Ruth and Naomi did not have male relatives to represent them in this kind of a matter, this is why Ruth approached Boaz in this particular way, because they had no living male relatives to approach him on her behalf. Okay, so this was out of the box, but she did it in a way that was under the cover of night, and she was not, this booty call, or she was not, trying to come on to him. She was simply trying to make her appeal and letting him know that she would like to be covered. She wanted to come under his covering as her husband. All right, verse 15. He said, bring the veil that thou hast upon thee, and hold it. And when she held it, he measured 6 measures of barley and laid it on her, and she went into the city. Here again, Boaz wants to make sure that her actions and his actions are not misinterpreted. When she came to her mother-in-law, she said, verse 16, Naomi says to her, "Who art thou, my daughter?" And she told her all that the man had done to her. In other words, Naomi was getting a report. I sent you, as we saw in Ruth chapter 3, I sent you on this assignment. I let you know that it was time to approach Boaz. So who are you now? Are you coming back to me as a single woman? Are you coming back to me as a potential wife? Okay. Verse 17, and she said, "These 6 measures of barley gave he me, for he said to me, go not empty unto thy mother-in-law." Boaz did not allow Ruth to go home empty-handed. Okay? I hope you heard that, ladies. He sent her home with a promise that he was going to take care of it. And he sent her home with evidence of his intention towards her. Okay? So that's what I want you to get there. Verse 18. Then said she, "Sit still, my daughter, until thou know how the matter will fall, for the man will not be in rest until he have finished the thing this day." Here's another characteristic or quality of Boaz. Boaz was going to finish what he started. I'll say it again. Boaz was going to finish what he started. Okay? He was on a mission. And so as a man of God, you can't tell me that you're serious about a relationship if you have not addressed the necessary people and the necessary issues in order to get the relationship resolved, or the relationship initiated, or the relationship moving. Okay? So, men handle their business. Men don't leave room for things like this to go just, with no response or no clarity. Boaz was a man who was on a mission. He had a purpose. He knew what he wanted, and he was getting down to business. All right. Let's go into Ruth chapter 4. Ruth chapter 4, verse 1 says, "Then Boaz up to the gate and sat him down there, and behold, the kinsman of whom Boaz spake came by, unto whom he said, Ho, such a one, turn aside, sit down here. And he turned aside and sat down." So again, Boaz positions himself at the gate. He's ensuring that he's handling the issue right then and there. He's not letting 30 days go by, 60 days, 90 days, a year, 5 years. Like, he is very determined to settle the issue as to whether or not Ruth will be his wife. And I don't care what anyone says. When a man knows what he wants, he pursues it, he makes it legal, and he goes after it with a determination and a tenacity. If he wants you, he makes it clear, and he removes all barriers to that desire. All right? And he's also going to get witnesses. Let's look at verse 2. "And he took 10 men of the elders of the city and said, Sit ye down here. And they sat down." So Boaz was a man of influence and authority. Okay? We see later on in the text in verses 3 and 4, Boaz begins to lay his cards on the table. He was straightforward with the other kinsmen. He did not use trickery. Okay? And he told him flat out, if you redeem Naomi's land according to Jewish law, you also have to redeem the daughter-in-law that comes with the land. So he gave this man an opportunity to accept or reject the land and Ruth. And the near kinsman, he considered his own life, he considered his own family affairs, and he came to the conclusion that, hey, I feel like if I take this on, she's going to be a liability to me. If I take this on, my children that I have with her are going to be named after another man's family line, because that was Jewish law. So understand this. One man's rejection was another man's election. Two men saw the same woman with different viewpoints. One man saw Ruth as a liability. The other man saw Ruth as legacy. And that's a whole other sermon all by itself. And so because Boaz chose Ruth, we know that she was indeed legacy, because it tells us in scripture that verse 21 and 22 of Ruth chapter 4, and Salmon begat Boaz, Boaz begat Obed, Obed begat Jesse, and Jesse begat David, and we know David was in the lineage of Jesus. So again, Boaz was a man who did things in order, and he was not ruled by his emotions in any of this. If you did not catch part 1 and the explanation behind some of these characteristics, I am going to read a couple of them to you as I close out this section. So, characteristics of a godly man. We said in the beginning that Boaz's name means 3 things. His name meant a gentleman, colossal, great, and also prosperous. So these were 3 qualities right off the bat that we said were a part of Boaz's makeup. And so when someone says Boaz is dead, we know that's not true, because there are plenty of great gentlemen who are prosperous and are well-to-do and have the potential to do great things. All right. Boaz was established in his own business. He was established in his career. Okay. He was an entrepreneur. He had fields that he looked after. Some of us would even say today that Boaz would be a marketplace minister. Boaz had investment. He was considering his future. Boaz had respect of the men around him, his employees. His conversation was edifying. He was a leader who declared blessings over the people that he led. Boaz understood the art of delegation. Boaz wanted a background check on Ruth. He was not really one who just kind of went with the flow, but he did want some background on her. Boaz was not a sugar daddy. Even though he was older, he treated Ruth and entreated her like a daughter, not a potential date. Boaz encouraged her to continue to work and to continue to honor her mother-in-law. Boaz offered protection to Ruth willingly, without an ulterior motive involved. Boaz took on the decision to be a protector before he had the responsibility of her as a wife. Boaz was, encouraging to her and impressed with her decision to leave all for God. And so he recognized that she placed her trust in the Lord and not in man. There is actually a date in the Bible, Ruth chapter 2, verse 14. And in that date, we see some qualities there. Boaz invited her to dinner. They were not alone, and he supplied the meal. Boaz was not a stingy man, but a generous man. Boaz blessed her in secret without expecting anything in return, and he did not advertise his generosity to make her feel obligated to give something back. All right. Boaz was kind to the living and to the dead. And Boaz also gave her free course and permission to abide in his fields. So that was a rundown of part 1. And I hope that this teaching has been helpful to you. Please go back and watch part 1 if you'd like details on those characteristics. And I pray that this will help ladies in how to spot a Boaz, and it'll also help men in how to become a Boaz. So thank you for watching. Please share and take care, and God bless.